Welcome to Whispers of the Night. Tonight, we invite you to rest, to drift, and to wander through a map not drawn in ink, but one etched gently into the fabric of your dreams. This is a story of inner worlds, of forgotten islands and imagined paths of maps folded not in hands, but in memory. A story where your thoughts become rivers, your questions stars, and your feelings the villages you return to again and again. Let this space be your quiet harbor. Leave behind the weight of the day and allow the soft rhythm of words, breath, and imagination to gently guide you. You are safe, you are welcome here, and together we'll drift into the dream world where your compass doesn't point north, but inward toward Before we begin our journey, let's prepare the body and the mind for deep, peaceful rest. Take a moment to find comfort. Lie back, let your arms fall gently to your sides. Feel the support beneath you, and let gravity take just a little more of your weight. Now, take a deep breath in, hold it softly, and exhale slowly, as though your whole body is sighing. Let's do that again. Inhale, hold, and release. Slower this time, as though you're melting into the mattress. With each breath, imagine your body floating, as if gently rocked by calm water. The muscles in your face soften, your jaw releases, your shoulders, your chest, your hands, they all begin to feel just a little heavier and quieter. Now bring your attention to your feet. Imagine a gentle warmth spreading upward through your ankles, calves, and knees, like warm sunlight slowly painting you from the inside. Let this warmth rise through your legs, your hips, flowing through your belly and into your chest, calming. Spacious, steady dot. With every breath, the warmth grows. Soft, golden light filling your arms, your throat, your face. You're glowing from within. Now peaceful and still. Nothing needs to be done. Nowhere you need to be. You are simply here, breathing, resting. The compass of dreams. circles of faith and fog. The candle flame flickers gently beside you, and the world feels smaller in this quiet. You sit at a wooden table, smoothed by time and use, your hands resting beside a parchment that rustles like a whisper. A monk leans forward with slow purpose, dipping his quill into ink the color of ash. You watch him draw not a map in the way you know maps today, but a vision, soft and circular, drawn with reverence rather than precision. The map before you is a two-map, a circle of the known world with a simple cross inside, one line running east to west, the other north to south. The T divides the land into three parts: Asia above, Europe to the lower left, Africa to the lower right. At the top, always the top, lies Eden, drawn with gold leaf or left blank, beyond reach but not. Imagination. East is placed at the top of the page, not north, because in this time, maps align with the rising sun and the story of Genesis. You feel the comfort of that alignment, direction as devotion, orientation shaped by belief. There is no compass yet, no longitude or latitude, only meaning cradled. In simplicity, the monk's breath is steady. His robes rustle like soft parchment. Around the edge of the circle, he inks small cities, Jerusalem at the very center, anchoring everything, like a still point in a turning world. You trace its position with your eyes and feel something ancient stir, the need to place ourselves in something larger, something divine. This is not navigation. This is theology rendered in geography. A map not to help you move, but to remind you where you belong. The world is a sermon, and the map its soft echo. You close your eyes briefly and drift, carried on the scent of ink and oil lamps. When you open your eyes, time has turned. You are standing on the coast beside a Viking longship, the cold salt air brushing your skin. The sun hangs low on the horizon, and the sea smells of iron and mist. A sailor unfurls a woolen sail, patterned with runes. He carries not a map, but memory. The Vikings did not draw maps in ink. Their navigation was stored in the mind, woven into oral sagas, remembered through rhythm and rhyme. You think of their sunstones, crystals that may have helped them find the sun on cloudy days, splitting light to locate its hidden heart. Their maps were not drawn, but sung. You step aboard the ship, feeling its planks shift softly beneath you. The helmsman holds a memory map, a sequence of landmarks, winds and currents stored in a songline. Each verse marks a place, each pause a turn in the journey. This map lives in breath, not on parchment. The North Atlantic stretches ahead, both vast and invisible. You feel the courage in this kind of travel where the fog is thick and belief is the only compass. You imagine Greenland, Iceland, and Vinland coming into view through stories, not sightings. The world becomes not smaller, but more textured now. The sound of the sea gives way to the hush of sand. You stand beside a desert scholar under a sky so wide it hushes every thought. He holds a scroll made of parchment, its edges curled like dunes. The stars above shimmer, and he draws their paths with his fingertip. You're in the Islamic Golden Age, Baghdad or Cordoba, perhaps where the scholars blend inherited Greek astronomy with newly unfolding insight. They sketch the earth not as a perfect circle of myth, but as a sphere measured with math and starlight. Alkensrism, Al-Biarin. These names carry ideas like lanterns. You sit beneath an astrolabe, its brass frame catching the light like gold thread. With it, the scholar finds direction toward Mecca, calculates time for prayer, traces the motion of stars. His maps do not ignore faith, they harmonize it with observation. The earth becomes something both sacred and studyable. A globe appears, now not symbolic, but spatial. Albarn even estimates Earth's circumference using shadows and a mountain's height. You imagine how astonishing that must have felt. A globe held not just in imagination, but in numbers. You rest in the balance of this moment, where science and reverence live side by side, where the divine is not eclipsed by understanding, but quietly deepened by it. The scene shifts softly, again, like turning a page with sleepy fingers. You are now beside a different monk, centuries later, in a monastery on an island wrapped in wind. The scriptoria is cold, but alive with warmth from bodies and belief. The air smells of ink, wool, and wood smoke. He is copying from Ptolemy's geography, an ancient Roman text rediscovered in fragments and slowly translated through layers of Greek and Arabic. The monk squints under candlelight, redrawing coastlines he has never seen. The names are strange: Taprobana, Sarmatia, Syrica, lands rumored and remote. His tools are old straight-edge, compass, stylus, but his mind is reaching outward. These are the first stirrings of a shift from maps as mirrors, of myth to maps as instruments of exploration. Still, the fog remains. The world outside this monastery is dark, uncertain, wide. He colors oceans, not blue, but green. Land is yellowed like old parchment. He places wind heads at the corners of the page faces, blowing breezes from each direction, like sleeping gods watching over the earth. You wonder what he imagines as he copies these shapes. Does he see monsters in the margins, or possibility? Perhaps both. Perhaps every mapmaker, even now, holds a bit of both. As you rest in this layered history, your mind begins to see the circle more deeply. These early maps were not wrong. They were windows into the worldview of their time. They showed how people related to each other, to God, to the unknown. The circular world offers comfort. Boundaries are soft. There is a center to everything. You wonder what it feels like to believe the world is complete, held inside a single perfect line. And yet, you sense the restlessness growing, because outside the circle, something stirs, a wish to go farther. A question begins to form in the corners of the parchment. What if the world is not a circle? What if it stretches like a horizon not yet drawn? You feel the next chapter calling just beyond the edge of the map, where dragons sleep, where the fog waits to be parted, where someone someday will choose to sail off the edge and see what lies beyond. Monsters at the margins. The wind is soft tonight, a breath rolling in from the edges of the sea. You stand on the deck of an old wooden vessel, its timbers creaking beneath you like the floorboards of a dream. The sails above rippled gently, stitched with salt and story, and the stars overhead blink slowly like ancient eyes that never sleep. The ocean is wide and unfamiliar, and all around you fog, not the kind that bites or blinds, but a sleepier fog, thick and slow, curling around the edges of your thoughts. It softens the horizon and turns the world into something both hidden and imagined. This is where the maps used to end. Them, the circular charts inked in monasteries and libraries, bordered not with coastlines, but with wonder and fear and possibility. At the map's edge, there were no more cities, no more rivers or roads. There were only dragons. Hicks, dracones, they sometimes wrote here, be dragons. You don't see them yet, but you feel them curling in the edges of your imagination, swimming in the ink of old beliefs. You lean over the railing and look into the waters below. For a moment, the reflection flickers. Is that a whale or something with scales? You remember how sailors once spoke of crocodile-tentacled monsters, so large they could pull ships under, like pebbles tossed in a tide pool. They weren't entirely wrong. Giant squid do exist, drifting silently in the black abyss far beneath you. But myths magnify in the dark, and the sea in its mystery always made the perfect mirror for our deepest fears. You drift further, and the air thickens with the perfume of salt and parchment. A new scene unfurls before you, like a map rolled open with gentle hands. You are in the scriptorium of a medieval port city. Candles flicker, the scent of ink hangs in the air like mist. A cartographer sits at a wide desk. His fingers are stained with ochre and lapis, and before him is a world unfinished. The center is filled with familiar shapes, syrup, the Mediterranean, the coasts of North Africa. But as your eyes move outward, toward the sea, the certainty fades. There are shapes, yes, but they do not resemble anything you'd find on a modern globe. There are islands with no anchor in reality. Antilia, the Isle of the Seven Cities, Thule. They rise from the paper like dreams made visible, born of rumor and longing and the soft confusion of many languages. There are creatures, two beasts with long necks, scaled backs, wide wings, and fiery eyes. Sea monsters, men with dog heads, and one-eyed giants roam the periphery. These aren't decorations, though they look like art. They are stories people believed or at least didn't entirely disbelieve. They filled in the blank spaces where knowledge ran out, where no one had gone. The imagination stepped forward. You understand that impulse. Even now, when we don't know, we still dream. The wind changes. You're sailing again, this time in the company of stories, not maps. You sit beside Marco Polo, whose words flicker across your mind like lamplight on parchment. He speaks of lands so far and strange that they sound like fables, cities of gold, rivers of quicksilver, mountains that hum with spirits. He tells you of serpents in India that are so vast they swallow men whole, of deserts that sing at night, of palaces with marble walls and mirrored ceilings that reflect the stars. You know not all of it is true, but some of it is. That's the magic of such tales. They hover in the space between fact and faith, between what is and what might be. You listen to him, and the ship beneath you rocks softly. You close your eyes and let his voice wrap around you like a warm wool blanket. Whether his stories are real or not doesn't matter tonight. They are true in the way dreams are true felt, remembered, half-shaped by longing. You wake into a new scene, a coastal town brimming with trade and whispers. This is the age of discovery. Sailors gather in the early morning light, ready to push beyond what the maps show. They carry maps that now stretch farther down Africa's edge, toward the tip of the known world. And yet, the fear remains. You watch them murmur over tales of the boiling seas at the equator, where ships would be swallowed by flame, of seabirds the size of ships, of sailors who never returned, their ships drifting back with torn sails and silent decks. The unknown still breathes at the map's edge, but now something has shifted. There is a hunger not just to know, but to go. Curiosity begins to rise, like a tide that cannot be held back. You look at one sailor's hand. He carries a compass, a small, spinning star in a brass box. It is a fragile thing, really, but it tells him something no myth can. Direction. This simple needle is beginning to pierce through the fog of fear. Now you drift to a library filled with scrolls and dust and the scent of memory. A scholar gently unrolls a maptha, Tabula Rogeriana, drawn by Eladrext in the 12th century. You smile at its south-up orientation, a reminder that north isn't always up. Perspective is a choice, and maps carry more than information, they carry worldview. Eladrext's map is astonishingly detailed, especially for its time. Coastlines, mountains, rivers, cities, drawn with care. No monsters lurk in these seas, just the patient recording of what travelers have seen, heard, and felt. Observation begins to replace imagination in some corners of the world, but even so, imagination never truly leaves. It only changes its shape. You understand now, monsters at the margins were never just threats. They were placeholders for the possible, for the things too big or too strange or too wonderful to yet be named. You sit in the stillness of this idea. The unknown is not the enemy. It is the invitation. Later, you return to sea, and this time, the world begins to open. New continents, new stars, new languages. Some maps shrink the monsters, others erase them. But something is always lost when the mystery is pushed too far away. You feel a kind of grief for the dragons. They were never meant to be feared, not truly. They were reminders that there was always more, always something not yet found. Now, with every mapped coastline, with every measured mile, the world becomes knowable. And in that knowing, something of the wonder softens. Still, it isn't gone. You feel it in the swell of the waves, in the breath of night air, in the hush that falls when you stand at the edge of what you understand. There are still margins, even now, but they've moved inward. The dragons have gone underground, or deeper, into the sea, or farther into the stars, or perhaps they've simply taken new names. You begin to feel drowsy now, wrapped in the rhythm of history and sea. The ship drifts slow and steady, Above, stars scatter across the sky like powdered pearl dust. Below, the ocean stretches wider than any map ever dared to hold dot. You think of the human need to draw borders around the unknown, to make marks on paper where none existed, to say, here is what we know, and there lies something else. You lie back, and the deck beneath you feels warm from the sun that has long since set. The sails flap like lullabies. Somewhere in the distance, a soft gull calls, and the monsters, they sleep too, in stories, in dreams, in pages still being turned. You wonder, softly, what happens when the monsters vanish, and the map itself becomes art. The golden age of ink. The room is quiet, but not still. The walls are lined with scrolls, paper, and instruments, brass compasses, wooden rulers, curved blades for trimming maps down to their final, perfect shape. Outside, the world changes. It is the Renaissance age of rediscovery, curiosity, and light. But here, in this moment, everything is hushed, as though the earth is being redrawn in silence. A man leans over his desk, his hand steady, his breath even. His quill moves slowly through the delicate blue paint of the Oceana pigment made from crushed lapis lazuli, once more valuable than gold. Every curve of a coastline is shaped with reverence, like embroidery stitched into time. This is not merely cartography, it is devotion, an offering, a quiet pursuit of beauty that also happens to explain the world. You move closer, your steps muffled by the soft straw covering the stone floor. He does not look up. He does not need to. This work is deep and inward concentration folded over. Like the corners of an old map, the candlelight trembles gently above him, gilding the edges of the map as it grows. This is a new earth. You hold it in your hands like a prayer book, each page painted and etched with loving precision. Ortelius does not merely make maps. He curates them, collects them from other cartographers, cross-references their lines, shapes their differences into coherence. Your thoughts drift gently across distant names: Scythia, Tartary, Nova Zembla. These names are embroidered with longing and mystery, stitched onto countenance half seen, but it is smaller now. The world, once enclosed in fog and monsters, is now being colored in one kingdom, one coastline at a time. And yet, the wonder remains. It is simply rearranged, not in dragons or sea serpents, but in the precision of a river's bend. His name is Gerardus Mercator. You pause beside him and peer over his shoulder. The pull of the compass needle, the problem of making a sphere fit onto a flat page, TIE, is not making art, not quite. He is solving a problem of mathematics and vision. His projection, the Mercator projection, is an attempt to preserve direction at sea. It stretches the world in strange ways, but it keeps the compass true. A sailor can draw a straight line from Lisbon to Recife and follow it faithfully. You run your fingers along one of his early maps. Greenland looms, far larger than it is. Africa shrinks. The geometry is skewed, but the intention is pure. Mercator wants not to paint the world as it looks, but to help people find their way across it. And yet, in his later years, Mercator turns again to mystery. He draws a world map that includes the North Pole as a whirlpool, surrounded by 4 great islands and a mountain called Rups Nigra Black Rock. You smile. Even the most rational minds leave room for imagination. You return to the workshop where Ortelius has stepped away. You notice small details, sea monsters that now look more decorative than threatening. Ships bobbing like musical notes in the painted blue. Gold leaf glimmers across the names of empires. The ocean curls in delicate waves. Tiny flags flutter beside imagined cities. This is a map as a canvas, a chart as a poem. Each corner holds embellishments, holding globes, medallions with Latin inscriptions, compass roses blooming like flowers. You feel as though the world is not being conquered here, but loved, admired, tenderly understood. There is no rush in this room. Everything moves slowly, just as it must, because every stroke of ink is a commitment to memory, to geography, to wonder. Later, you wander into a different room, quieter still. A globe rests on a pedestal in the center, slowly spinning beneath a soft shaft of sunlight. You watch it turn. It feels different from the maps, frowned and whole, unbroken by borders. You learn that globes, though older in concept, gained renewed popularity during this time. The printing press allowed them to be made in Paris terrestrial and celestial, showing the earth and stars together. Your touch rests over the ocean. It's strange how much space there is between the land. The world, even when known, still feels vast. A nearby book lies open to a map of the southern hemisphere. Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land. It stretches in pale yellow across the bottom of the page balance to the continents. Above, no one has seen it, but it feels like it must exist. It is a placeholder for symmetry. You sit beside that map and wonder about how much of science begins as symmetry, as the desire for balance, for completion. The candlelight deepens. You return again to the heart of the workshop. Outside, the city murmurs with the clinking of carts, the echo of boots against stone, the occasional burst of laughter. But inside, the maps hold silence. They are not simply records, they are reflections of how people thought, dreamed, and hoped. You realize that every map carries the shape, not only of the earth, but of the minds that made them, and of the questions they couldn't yet answer. Why does the ocean move? What lies at the poles? How high are mountains, truly? How far do these rivers flow before they vanish into the soil? These are not just lines, they are lullabies of uncertainty and discovery humming beneath the page. You think again of the hands that made these works, the patience, the stillness, that mapping the world could be an art of deep affection, not to own it, but to see it clearly. You close your eyes and let yourself float between maps and dreams. You drift through maps made of vellum and parchment, illuminated with threads of gold, through atlases bound in leather, through scrolls stored in carved wooden drawers. You sail gently through through pages that hum with the effort to hold the world still. How they would have bent over these pages, hearts beating just a little faster at the shape of distant lands. And then your thoughts, slow, because beyond all the embellishment and beauty, the maps were slowly growing more useful. They were being copied, shared, improved, carried aboard ships, headed for places their pages did not yet know. Soon, lines would become borders, oceans would become routes, maps would become tools of power as much as wonder, and as the world was, charted with increasing precision, and the world, as drawn here, still breathes beneath the gold. Somewhere on a nearby shelf, a strange brass instrument begins to glint in the dark, a device stars, clocks, and the shape of time. Night has fallen gently across the sea, and your ship drifts slowly forward. The wind sighs through the rigging, and every wooden beam creaks with a rhythm that lulls you deeper into stillness. Overhead, the stars open like blossoms in a dark garden, familiar, ancient, and gently flickering. There is no land in sight, only water in every direction, and the steady glow of the moon painting a pale silver path across the waves. You stand near the bow, your hand resting lightly on the worn wood, and you look up. In this chapter of your journey, the earth no longer guides you, only the sky. You begin far, far away in the wide waters of the Pacific. Beneath you now is a Vaca Mona double-hulled canoe, its sails shaped like wings, carved from memory and reverence. You are among Polynesian navigators, masters of an ancient knowledge that lives not on paper, but in the body. The navigator sits cross-legged, his gaze calm and unblinking. He knows the stars not as names or coordinates, but as companions. His ancestors crossed thousands of miles of open ocean without compass or clock. Instead, they watched the sun and moon, the flight paths of birds, the color of waves, the taste of wind, the rising of stars over the curve of the horizon. The sky is a map, the sea is a story. You learn that this knowledge has a name wafting. It is passed through generations by chant, by gesture, by long nights under constellations, the Southern Cross, the Pleiades, Orion's belt. Each star rises in its own place, season after season, like a trusted guide returning home. Your body sways gently with the canoe. There is no fear here, only trust in memory, in rhythm, in the unspoken wisdom of the sky. Now the winds shift. You are elsewhere, though time and space blur in the softness of the stars. This is the desert of the Islamic Golden Age, beneath a dome of stars so clear they seem close enough to touch. Beside you is an astronomer with an astrolabe. The brass disc glints in the moonlight, delicate and precise. He tilts it toward the stars, measuring their height above the horizon. With it, he can tell the time, the direction of prayer, the day of the year. It is not a clock, it is a language. You sit beside him, the air cool and still. He speaks of Al-Zarqalq, Altiesk, Al-Batning, scholars who refined planetary models, corrected star charts, translated and expanded upon Greek knowledge. with a kind of quiet brilliance. You realize that here, astronomy is not separate from faith. It is an extension of it. To understand the sky is to understand the order of creation. The stars do not simply shine, they teach. You breathe deeply and feel the weight of that thought settle over you like a warm blanket. The stars are more than ornaments in the sky. They are clocks, compasses, calendars, and they have always been watching. Again, the world turns. The stars shimmer, then dissolve into candlelight. You are now in a study in England in the early 18th century. The window is cracked open and a salty breeze flutters through lace curtains. On the table lies an elegant brass device, small, round, ticking softly. It is a marine chronometer. You listen to its heartbeat, steady and sure. Its invention is one of the quiet revolutions of navigation, more transformative than any map, more reliable than any myth, because now sailors can not only tell where they are, north and south, but when dot and with time comes longitude. You meet its creator, John Harrison, a carpenter by trade, a clockmaker by obsession. He worked for decades on this problem. Until now, ships could sail confidently in latitude by watching the height of the sun or stars. But longitude, the east-west measure, required knowing the exact time at sea and comparing it to a fixed point back home. Too many ships had wrecked, too many sailors lost. The world needed a clock that could keep perfect time, even when tossed in a storm, even when baked in sun and soaked in salt. Harrison's marine chronometer solved the problem. It held time in its brass bones like a promise. You imagine a ship in the vast Atlantic, its navigator opening the chronometer's case, checking its time against the sun's position hand. Suddenly, the map is no longer guesswork. The ocean becomes legible. Time has become a tool, a soft ticking key that unlocks the world. Later, you walk slowly through the Royal Observatory at Greenwich. The air is still and reverent. Here, lines of time are born. You stand on the prime meridian, longitude 0. It is an imaginary line that divides the globe in half, east and west. But here, it is marked in brass beneath your feet. The stars above Greenwich were once charted nightly. Telescopes peered upward, not for beauty, but for precision. Star catalogs were made, positions recorded, movements predicted, every flicker measured, every degree noted. Why? Because ships at sea depended on those stars to guide them. And now, thanks to the chronometer, they had the tools to interpret that guidance. Astronomy became navigation, time and space, no longer separate. You imagine the moment when a captain, far out at sea, reads the sky, checks his clock, and knows within miles where he floats on the planet. You think about how profound that is. To be a speck on the ocean, yet know your exact place, simply by looking upward and listening to time. The night deepens. Your thoughts drift to how maps, once colored in myth, now fold in science. But even science, in its stillness, feels poetic. The sky is a clock that never forgets. It has always been ticking through comets and eclipses, through solstices and equinoxes, through ancient chants and modern calculations. You remember Galileo's drawings of Jupiter's moons, Kepler's laws of planetary motion, Newton's theories that tied time, space, and gravity into one gentle gravity-bound rhythm. These names swirl through your thoughts like constellations, but none of them outshine the feeling that's grown through this chapter, the sense that knowing the sky doesn't take away its wonder, it deepens it. The Pacific stretches beneath you again, dark and calm. The moon rides high above, pulling at the tides with its silent touch. You think of how sailors once timed their journeys by lunar tables, calculating positions with shadows and seconds. You rest your hand on the wooden rail. It's smooth, warm from the sun that has long since set. You close your eyes and breathe in the scent of salt and old rope somewhere nearby. The chronometer ticks on, not loudly, just enough to mark your presence in this moment, enough to tell you you are here. You wonder softly what it means to place yourself in time, to know not just where you are on the globe, but when you are in history, to feel the arc of human knowledge stretching behind you canoes on open seas, eyes to the stars, brass clocks in wooden chests. You drift between all of them now. Time folds like a chart. Longitude and latitude become lullabies. Even now, satellites orbit overhead, whispering your exact location to any phone that asks. But the stars are still there, patiently waiting, just in case we remember to look up. You look up, and they do not move for you, but somehow they guide you all the same. And then, as you stand on this ship, halfway between yesterday and tomorrow, you notice a glimmer, a pale glow on the farthest edge of the map, a shape forming not of land or sea, but of myth, not a place we used to know, but one imaginary islands and honest mistakes. The sea is quiet now, its voice hushed as though cradling a secret. You drift slowly, gently, across calm waters that reflect the night sky like old glass. The stars above flicker softly, and the world feels just uncertain enough to invite wonder. Your ship is still, its sails barely breathing. You stand near the rail, looking toward a dark horizon, one not marked by land, but by longing. There are places you cannot find on any modern map, and yet once they were drawn carefully, confidently, on charts that hoped they were true. Tonight, you sail toward those places, not to land there, but to understand why they existed at all. The first mist-shrouded island to rise before you is called High-Brazil. It floats somewhere west of Ireland, caught in a drifting circle of legend. You may have heard whispers of it before, place cloaked in mist, visible only once every 7 years. A land of peace and knowledge, where strange beings live in quiet wisdom, and the air glows gold at dusk. On maps from the 14th to 17th centuries, High-Brazil appears with surprising regularity, often as a perfect circle, sometimes with a central river splitting it in two. Sailors searched for it, scholars debated it, and though it was never truly found, it lingered. You imagine it now rising out of the fog, its shoreline luminous, its hills steeped in silence. You feel the ache of wanting it to be real, not for riches or conquest, just for the beauty of possibility. Islands like this are born not just of mistake, but of desire. The world felt vast and mysterious, and so maps reached outward, filling the blankness with gentle fiction. You let that thought settle like a feather on the tide. Sometimes we draw what we wish were there. Farther south, the sea warms. A different land waits beneath the ink of myth and ambition, El Dorado. But this is no island, it's a city, or sometimes a lake, or a kingdom made entirely of gold. Its shape changes with every telling, but the glow remains. You step onto a map from the early 1500s, where South America stretches wide and green, and somewhere within it lies a shimmering named, undefined, but glowing just enough to spark hope. The story begins with the Gilded Man, a tribal chief covered in gold dust, who would dive into a sacred lake as an offering to the gods. From there, the tales multiplied. Cities of gold hidden in jungles, treasures buried in mountains, empires richer than the imagination could hold. Explorers chased these dreams across rivers and cliffs, into forests tangled with light and shadow. They never found El Dorado, but their roots filled maps with new knowledge, mountain passes, tributaries, indigenous communities whose lives had never before been charted. You breathe in the jungle's imagined, scent-damp earth, orchids, torch, smoke, and you understand even the falsehoods of maps have consequences. Sometimes, chasing a myth uncovers something real. Even mistakes can move us forward. Now you cross into colder waters, where the globe's southern edge unfolds into mystery. On dozens of Renaissance maps, a great land appears across the bottom massive, and unexplored Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land. Cartographers believed that for the Earth to be balanced, there must be a landmass down there, opposite the known continents, a counterweight, a symmetry of ice and shadow. No one had seen it, and yet it stretched across centuries of maps like a question no one could answer. You walk now across this imagined continent, not barren or brutal as Antarctica would later prove to be, but imagined fertile green and mountainous, scattered with strange kingdoms. Some maps even labeled its regions: Beach, Siticorum, Reggio, the land of parrots. As you walk, snow begins to fall, though it feels more like a memory than weather. This land never existed, but it shaped real exploration. Navigators sought it, expeditions launched, and when it wasn't found, the maps were redrawn. You realize the elegance of that process, the willingness to correct, to change a belief when the world says otherwise. A map, after all, is a story in pencil, not stone. You return now to a quiet study, perhaps the one from chapters ago. A warm room filled with scrolls and globes and charts rolled up like sighs. You unroll one now. It's old, yellowed at the edges, and there just off the coast of California's an island of California. It says, separated from the mainland by a narrow channel. For more than a century, maps drew California not as part of the continent, but as a large island floating just off North America's edge. It wasn't a wild guess. Early explorers navigating the Gulf of California believed they were cutting through to an open sea. Their reports were copied, translated, mistranslated. The ideas spread. Once the belief was inked into maps, it lingered decades longer than it should have. Even after evidence to the contrary appeared, the island of California remained, because maps are not just truth, they are trust. You look closely at the coastlines. They are beautifully drawn, like lace. You imagine the hand of the cartographer, hesitating just for a second, wondering, should I connect it to the mainland or let it drift a little longer in the dream? You exhale softly. The edge of certainty is always a place of grace. You move now to a globe knot, a printed one, but a hand-carved wooden sphere, painted with tender strokes. As you turn it gently, you find places that were never there. Sandy Island in the Coral Sea, Zeno Island near Greenland, Antillia just west of the Azores. Each one had a reason, a shadow mistaken for land, a sailor's tale passed in port taverns, a smudge on a spyglass, a name heard once, misunderstood, and passed on. You run your fingers across each phantom island, feeling how imagination slips into reality when repeated often enough. And you think these weren't lies. They were honest mistakes, made in a world too big to know completely. And yet, even in their error, they shaped the journey. Ships changed course, letters were written, settlements dreamed, because even the places that weren't there mattered. You step back from the maps and let the room dim. The candle flickers low. Somewhere outside, the wind shifts, curling softly around the shutters like a sigh. You sit with this thought that maps are not just science, but story. They are shaped by wonder, hope, missteps, and curiosity. The cartographers of old did not always have certainty, but they had longing and the courage to draw anyway. You picture them end-stained, candlelit, listening to sailors' tales, deciding which lines to draw, which rumors to believe. Some drew what they feared, others what they yearned for. And in the silence, you wonder, how much of the world have we lost by forgetting to dream? How many places were never found not because they weren't there, but because we stopped looking? The stars blink again above your ship. The sea around you is empty, now but not lonely. It holds all the places that once were believed. It cradles their shapes in quiet memory. You feel comfort in that mistakes are part of the map, that errors to hold beauty. Imagination has always been a compass, not for direction, but for meaning. And just as you drift gently into sleep, your thoughts land on a question. What if the most enduring maps were not those of places, but of a map of dreams? The ship that once carried you through oceans, islands, and starlit skies now rocks quietly at anchor. Its sails rest, furled like folded wings, and the sea laps gently against its wooden sides. The maps that guided you this far lie tucked away, their edges curled with use, their lines softened by time. Tonight, the journey turns inward. You close your eyes and feel the world shift not outward toward distant coasts, but inward, into the rich and intricate terrain of thought. Your own inner world begins to unfurl like a scroll. There are no borders here, no compass rose, and yet something in you knows the way. You begin in a hallway. It is long, stone-lined, and gently lit by lanterns that flicker as if they breathe. The floor beneath your feet feels familiar, like the remembered rhythm of footsteps taken long ago. You walk slowly, and with each step, a door appears on your left, then another on your right, each one carved with symbols only your heart understands. This, you realize, is a memory palace. The concept is older than the printing press, older than telescopes. It was once used by Greek orators, Roman senators, and Renaissance scholars, a way to store knowledge, not on paper, but in imagined space. Each room holds a memory. Each corridor holds meaning. And here, in the soft hush of thought, you are both architect and traveler. You reach for a doorknob and turn it gently. Inside, a sunlit kitchen from your childhood, the scent of something baking, the sound of laughter layered over the ticking of a wall clock. You step through another door, a summer field, the sky enormous, your feet bare in tall grass, the hum of bees, a dog barking far away. These places are not invented. They're remembered, mapped not by ink, but by emotion. You begin to understand how the mind maps itself. Neurologists call it spatial memory, the ability to picture spaces, routes, layouts. But here, under the lamp glow of imagination, it feels like something softer. Not just data, but connection, familiarity, comfort. You drift from room to room, and each one brings not just image, but sensation, warmth, nostalgia, a flicker of loss, the tug of joy. Your mind, like the world, is full of landscapes. Some are vast, like forests filled with dreams that never ended. Others are small and detailed, like the curve of handwriting on a letter you once loved. The inner map is shaped by what matters to you. It doesn't obey longitude or latitude. It doesn't follow scale. It bends, stretches, and curls around memory, emotion, and story. And yet, you never feel lost because you've been here before. Further inside, the palace shifts. You enter a room made of water. The floor is a lake, shallow and still. Your footsteps ripple outward, but do not disturb the surface for long. This is the landscape of sleep. Sleep, too, has a cartography. Scientists study it with waves and stages, REM and non-REM, cycles that repeat like quiet tides. But inside your experience, it feels more fluid, more luminous. You wade into the center of the lake and lie back. The water holds you like a memory. As you float, images begin to form above you. Clouds that carry dreams. Some are fleeting faces you do not know, streets you've never walked. Others return again and again, like familiar landmarks. A loved one's voice, a room from years ago, a bird flying through an open window. You realize that dreams often reuse the shapes of your waking life, not as copies, but as echoes. The mind remaps itself during sleep. It redraws your days, rearranges your thoughts, sometimes for comfort, sometimes for clarity, and sometimes just because dreaming is a kind of wandering. A breeze stirs the surface. of the lake, and you find yourself standing on an overlook, now a hilltop, in your imagination, surrounded by wind and silence. Below, a map unfurls across the valley floor. It glows with lines not drawn by cartographers, but traced by emotion. Here is the path of grief, twisting, looping, fading into fog. Beside it, the river of joy, wide, unpredictable, sparkling in the sun. The mountain of effort, the forest of fear. Neurons fire, connections form. What we feel becomes geography. And with time, the map deepens. You remember how some feelings leave marks that never quite fade. How a familiar scent, years later, can return you to a place or person with startling precision. That's the work of the inner cartographer, always tracing, always drawing, always remembering. You smile softly. The map of dreams is not fixed. It grows with you in the quiet that follows. You find yourself in a garden. Its paths are made of thought, and its flowers bloom with memory. Some petals shimmer with possibility, things not yet lived. Others wilt slightly, soft with age. You kneel and touch the soil. It is warm. Your thoughts wander to the ancient idea of the soul's geography. How poets and mystics once believed that heaven, hell, and everything in between were not only spiritual places, but psychological ones too. Perhaps we have always felt the need to map the intangible dot, to place sorrow somewhere we can revisit, to build joy into a hill we can climb again, to chart confusion as a foggy plain, and love as a glowing compass that never falters. No matter how far we drift, you sit beneath a tree whose branches sway gently in time with your breath. Quietly, what language does the heart use when it draws a map? You begin walking again. The path leads you downward into a canyon filled with mirrors. Each one shows a different version of you, not fantastical, but familiar. You at 10 years old. You last week. You in a moment you'd forgotten until just now. This, too, is part of the map. The self as landscape. You touch one of the mirrors, and it turns to water. In its reflection, you glimpse how time has moved through you, not in years or dates, but in changes of heart, in moments of growth that felt like climbing mountains, in decisions that rerouted everything. Neuroscience calls this episodic memory, but here, in the canyon of mirrors, it feels more like story, the tale of you. You are not a single point on the map. You are the map itself, flayers of thought, feeling, experience, and memory. A shifting geography that only you can fully know at last. The journey brings you to a quiet clearing. The air is still. The sky above you swirls slowly, painted with stars. And in the center of the clearing lies a compass. It does not point north. Instead, it glows gently with warmth. Its needle moves, not with the pull of magnetic fields, but with the tug of what matters most to you. It responds to kindness, to longing, to the slow unfolding of dreams. You reach down and pick it up. The compass hums softly in your hand, as if to say, you already know the way. You sit down in the clearing, legs crossed, breath slow. Around you, the landscape of your mind curls inward like a sleeping cat. Everything feels held, connected, known, and you realize something quietly beautiful, that even when you feel lost, your inner world is not directionless. There is always a path. It may not be drawn in ink or named in any language, but it exists in intuition, in dreams, in the silent pull of memory. Your thoughts are rivers, your questions, stars, your love, the lantern that lights your way. And now, as sleep begins to gather at the edges of your mind, as your breath deepens, as the maps of the outer world fade gently from view, you wonder if dreams can be charted like seas and lands. Then where does imagination go when it And now, the map has folded softly back into sleep. The compass hums quietly in your hand, and the stars have drawn a path just for you, not outward, but inward. Rest well, dear dreamer. Your story continues in sleep. We'll be here when you're ready to journey again.